Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So, how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to Hustle and Flow. I'm your host, Heather Hubbard, and we are on episode 230. And today we are talking about overfunctioning during times of stress. I am someone who tends to overfunction. I am witnessing a lot of people overfunctioning right now. And the type of people who listen to my podcast, they tend to be type A, high achieving professional women. Whether it is personality or simply the professions we are in, we tend to overfunction. And I thought today was a great day to talk about that. So, how we can actually take a step back, start to recognize when it is happening, and what to do about it. But before we get to that, I wanted to share that we have an upcoming Ask Me Anything episode. So I introduced this back in September, and that was episode 207. And so my goal for 2025 is to do one per quarter. So there is one that will be coming up soon, but the only way that I can answer your questions is if you ask them. So all you have to do to submit your question is to go to heatherjoyhubbard.com/ask me anything. heatherjoyhubbard.com/ask me anything. And I will put that link in the show notes as well. So this next Ask Me Anything episode is going to be specific to becoming an entrepreneur and running your business. So anything goes, whether it relates to how I decided to leave my profession and start a business, anything related to the early years until now, anything and everything that you want to ask, you can submit in that form. If you do not have a question related to starting a business, running a business, you can still fill out that form. I'll still have your question. So I'll just save that for a future episode. Just know that that is the one that is coming up. Okay. heatherjoyhubbard.com/ask me anything. Go fill out that form. All right. Let's talk about overfunctioning. The truth is, when we talk about stress and the way that we overfunction or underfunction, a lot of that actually has to do with our nervous system and the way that we deal with a lot of things when we are in a moment of crisis. So this goes back to when our amygdala gets triggered. What do we do with it? Do we run away? Are we fleeing? That's the flight. Do we freeze? Do we shut down? Do we just stop? Or do we fight? We are fighting. Fighting is overfunctioning. Now, you could still overfunction with the other two, but for the most part, when you are fighting, you are overfunctioning. And all three are survival methods. Absolutely, all three are survival methods. And you know that I am a huge fan of mindfulness. There are a lot of tools and techniques to help you regulate your nervous system. But know that trauma is real, fear is real, stress, anxiety, all of these things are real, and it is biological. So if you are being triggered, then you are probably going to function, you are going to show up in one of these ways. This applies all the time, but given what all is happening right now in the United States, I think for many of us, we are in states of stress. We are in states of anxiety. We are in states of fear, and it is triggering trauma, whether it is our own trauma, whether it is generational trauma, whether it is simply fear of what things can mean. So it's trauma just related to whether it is your race, your gender, prior persecutions as a people. All of this can come up. So the goal is not to say, well, what is wrong with me? Why am I being triggered? We're being triggered. We just are. We are humans. We are paying attention. We have lived experiences. We're knowledgeable. We are intelligent. We understand history. We know these things. So, of course this is happening. The question becomes, what do we do with that? What do we do with that? So a lot of people did dry January. And I still drank, but I did a form of dry January in that I really got off of social media as much as possible. I did not make an announcement. I just kind of did it. And I have not fully gone back on because of it. Just it was so helpful for me to not be on it that, and just because the social media streets are so wild right now, um, I don't know that I want to be on them. So that's where I'm actually seeing a lot of over functioning. I am seeing some under functioning as well. First and foremost, if you are getting sucked into the news cycle, if you are getting sucked into all of the social media posts, if you are just constantly, right? Like you're looking at the news app, you're constantly looking at what's happening now, what's happening now, what's happening now. I can't believe this is happening. And now he did this. Oh my gosh. If you are in that state, if you are in that cycle, you are going to totally get yourself worked up. And this is where you tend to you're fighting. Even if you're not actually doing anything to make a difference, you're still in that fight mode because if you were in flight mode, you'd be running away. You would be turning it off. You would be avoiding it. And that's what I'm part of what I'm doing, right? So we're not looking to avoid, we're not looking to bury our heads in the sand, but we're also looking to regulate our nervous systems and make sure that we are not being triggered in ways that only hurt us, that only hurt us. I think I heard once that resentment is like, it's basically drinking your enemy's poison and thinking it's going to hurt them and not you, or something like that. And this is kind of the same thing, right? So we're going to talk through like how do we actually make a difference without taking ourselves out. I have a friend whose father recently suffered a heart attack and he was very upset, very much watching the news nonstop and just in this cycle. And they kept saying, like, you've got to calm down. You got to create some space or you're going to have a heart attack. And he did. He did. And that's part of why I want to talk about this because this is a very real thing. When we talk about taking care of yourself, when we talk about not doom scrolling, when we talk about, taking a break, it's not just about your mental well-being, it is about your physical well-being. I remember after Dobbs came out and Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I live in the South as well. So not only did I see where everything was going, for the nation, I was very concerned about these deep red states, including the one I live in, and what that means for people. And I had, at that point, the tumor was gone, but I was still on steroids. So I still wasn't in a great place of being able to regulate. And whoa, talk about over functioning. I just went into fight mode, partly because I was like, what else do I have going on? I was in the sabbatical as if like this was what I should be doing. And I ended up getting shingles, a really, really bad case of shingles. It was so painful, so painful. And I was like, I have been so stressed the last few years. Why would I suddenly have shingles now? And my mother's the one who pointed it out, and she was absolutely correct. After that decision came out, I was so over functioning. I was so just paying attention to all the news and all the things and wondering why the hell others didn't care and why they weren't taking any action. And I physically got ill. I physically got ill. So this is just a reminder to everyone that yes, we want to mentally take care of ourselves. We want to emotionally take care of ourselves, but it's also about physically taking care of ourselves. So there's also the opposite, which is the flight or maybe even the freeze. I have seen a lot of people not say anything. And it definitely makes me not trust them. I think a lot of people are no longer on social media. They're all taking a break. I get that. Totally get that. But when I see people on social media, like every time I do get on, it's still business as usual for them. And some of these people, I'm in the online business space as well. So there's a lot of, we'll say, influencers, some of the big folks out there, that it seemed really interesting. In 2020, they were very vocal during, I mean, the Black Lives Matter movement has been going on for a long time. But in 2020, there was definitely, in that summer, there was a moment where a lot of people showed up and made commitments and were speaking out in ways that they had not before. And a lot of those people are silent right now. But they are still posting every day. They're still talking about business every day. It's as if nothing's going on. And that could be like that legit could just be their response. In the same way that some of us overfunction, it could just be their like, I can't handle this. I'm not dealing with this. So, like, that's just the way that they're dealing. I suspect, though, that they are not showing up as the person they were claiming to be in 2020, which makes me think that they were never that person in 2020. It reminds me of the episode we just did with Corey Carew on courageous leadership and how when you claim that you are a values-based business and you have certain values, but then you're no longer leading with those values, it makes, as a consumer, as someone who is watching, it always makes you wonder, well, were those ever your values to begin with? Or do your values sway with public opinion or what is going on at any given moment with politics, in which case I do not trust you. I do not want to work with you. And there are many people that I'm watching right now and I'm like, interesting. You are not the person I thought you were. So, but again, maybe this is just how they're dealing. But so how do we deal right now? How do we deal right now? I think it's going to be different for everyone. I can only share with you what I am doing and how I try to witness my overfunctioning and take action to deal with it. So, one of the first things that I did was I removed the news app from my phone. So, I have an Apple and news is like all right on the homepage. And Mia Lamott shared this with me a few years ago, and I was just like, not have news on your phone? What? I was just like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. That was wild to me. And I think just leading up to the inauguration, I was like, I think that this would actually be healthy for me because I had already been witnessing what was happening with some news. And we'll get into this in a little bit, but I've been learning a lot more about how algorithms work. And so, but I was just like, I don't think I actually want the influx of the news. I want to be very purposeful about when I go to get the news and who I'm getting the news from. So I removed that app. And it was so interesting because, like, that's like, I'm like, where's the news? Where's the news? Like, it's just a habit. It was a routine. And so it made me a little uncomfortable to not have it. I don't turn on the news on the TV. I haven't in a long, long time. Because I trade stocks, though, I check in with CNBC. And CNBC, they're not doing clickbait as it relates to political things unless it is impacting, like, if Wall Street people are concerned. And so in that sense, it actually limits a lot of what's happening. But even then, so Trump was doing his very first speech as president at Davos. And so when he was speaking, even CNBC, they're their headline said something to do with in Trump's speech, but something related to DEI. And I was like, he's talking about DEI at Davos? I'm like, what is he saying now? And I click on it and he wasn't saying anything about it. Obviously, he keeps saying a bunch of shit, right? So this was not out of the realm, but I then like reread the headline and technically they were not saying he was speaking about it at the moment, but it was almost like everyone's watching it to see what he's going to say about this. But the way it was written, the way you first read it, made it sound like he was actually saying something. And I've noticed this with a lot of headlines. They are misleading. And sometimes we call that clickbait. But even if we're not calling it clickbait, they are saying things that are intended to shock you or outrage you such that you will click and read the story in the article. We all know that newspapers run on ads. We understand the concept that social media runs on ads. And this is where we've got a little bit of the algorithm at play because social media wants you to stay on their platform. That's how they're able to charge more for their ads. What I have not always known, and I have learned because I have recently, it's been something I was interested in. So I have been working with someone who is really good at this, and I've been learning a lot about how people monetize their content. I did not realize, I mean, we hear about like influencers and creators, but I don't think I'd ever met anyone in the wild who was truly doing this. And I learned that, so all of the like, whether it's funny or serious, but like the things that go viral on social media. Some of it is 100% organic and might happen for someone and it'll never happen again. But there are people out there who make a business going viral regularly because YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they pay people. They pay people. You and I could do this. If we got on there and we had enough views, then we would get paid money, really good money. Like you can get paid millions of dollars. And so there are tactics and formulas and things to do in order to get those views, including how to get those views for a certain amount of time because the monetization changes over time. But it includes like how long someone's watching something. And so I've been doing some of it just to test. Like, I always want to hear things, then I want to test. I always like to drill down to like the strategy behind it. But here's what I have learned, and I have heard it from some of the biggest and best content monetized creators out there. One, there are no ethics around it. So you can straight up lie. You can just lie about what you're saying and doing. And in fact, that often will create engagement where people will then start commenting or arguing. And that's considered a good thing because it means people are engaging and Facebook likes it, Instagram likes it. You are now in, you are hooked, and you're staying on the platform. So they're going to pay the person who created the content that allowed you all to get in a ruckus. Or to say, that's not true, or that's not right. And so part of it is doing something that is shocking, that is outrageous, that is like, wait, what? It creates, I don't think that's right. Anything like that, or it creates this curiosity. And so you're following along, you're waiting, you're like, huh? Which is why you can like get sucked into something. And then, a few minutes later or a minute later, you're like, well, I can't get that time back. Right? So knowing that can also help you with understanding how some of the, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, even on social media, how some of these, not really journalism, but like how some of these accounts that you've never really heard of continue to get this traction. Part of it is because Facebook and Instagram are paying them. And they're paying them because the more viral it can go, the more outrageous it is, the more shocking it is, the more it upsets you, the more you engage, then the more they pay them. And again, so I've even noticed with the algorithm, if I do share something or I do engage on something, I'll get more and more and more. But I'm noticing it's from like accounts that like I don't know. And I can just see how they're doing this. And even accounts I do follow, I have muted some of them because I very much support the work that they're doing. But every single post is like, red flag, we've got it. Like, this is a bad thing. This is crazy. What are we doing? And it's like, if that's all you're posting and you're not actually putting like action items on there or telling me what you're doing about it, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of that energy, partly because I get that that's how they grow their base. I get that's how they get monetized. But you and I have to put boundaries on that. We have to say what we want and don't want. And so the other piece to that is make sure you're fact checking things. This is part of why I'm not on it. So I'll sometimes see something I want to share, but I'll see it's a carousel. So I scroll through and then I'll see that they say something. And I'm like, I don't think that's right. And so I noticed also in I say the first week, I mean, we're only a few weeks in, but it feels like 5,000 years. Um, in the first few weeks, I would see something, I would be like, wait, but didn't he do that before? Or wait, is that even true? And then I would go research it. And so much of what, like, they were like, oh my gosh, he's doing this. Blah. And it's like, okay, but he did that before. And we can actually look to see how it was handled. And there are some legitimate things we have to really be paying attention to. So can we let go of the fucking stuff that like is not actually like it may annoy us and we don't like it, but really isn't the biggest issue that we need to be focused on. So turning everything into a hair on fire moment when it's like, this doesn't have to be a hair on fire moment, right? Like we already went through this. He already did this before. So it's not as outrageous as they're actually making it sound. There's that piece. And then the other piece is there's a lot of propaganda out there. And, we always talk about the propaganda on the right and how it's so manipulative. There's there's propaganda on the left right now. And I'm very well seeing it because I'm like, is that right? And like then I'll like go to do the research to actually see like, is this like, can I factually determine this is true? And I can't. Or I can actually factually determine it is false. But I have seen very intelligent friends and colleagues sharing some of this stuff because there's just this piece of like, well, if I'm seeing this and someone I know has liked it, like we're just assuming that it's all true because I mean, it could be true. Like things are so wild, anything could be true. And yet we are seeing anything and we're just passing it along as truth when it's not always true. And when I think about how these particular sites who share some of the propaganda are actually being monetized, we just have to be really careful that we are not supporting that. So what do we do? So if we're in this overfunctioning, overconsumption, getting riled up, talking about it all the time, what do we do? What do we do? Well, for me personally, like I said, I've pulled that off. I'm not on social media as much. When we say we want to be informed, my question is why? I don't mean that facetiously. But I think a lot of people say, like, I want to be informed. Well, why do you want to be informed? My question to you is, what are you doing about it? Are you taking action? Are you trying to be informed so that you can do something differently, so that you can try to be an advocate, so that you can try to stop something? Because if you're just trying to stay informed for information's sake, I would argue that's not a good reason to be informed. Like that's the kind of like drinking the poison. Like you are just choosing to be stressed out and anxious when technically you could just go bury your head in the sand and be better off. The world won't be better off, which leads me to a lot of times we overfunction in a time of crisis because we're like, I got to fix this. I've got to jump into this. A lot of us are fixers, right? And so we take on more responsibility and we think this is my responsibility. And we do all have a role to play, but fixing the whole damn thing is probably not your responsibility. Now, if you are a politician, if you are thinking about becoming a politician, if you work for a nonprofit where you're doing advocacy work, where you are genuinely fighting back, all of that stuff, then yeah, that might literally be your job. Okay. I don't actually know a lot of those people. And so if you're not, if that's not you, then what should you be responsible for? Just because we know how to show up in situations and fix it, that is simply our stress response. It doesn't make it right. We think it is because we're super productive. And a lot of times people are like, thank you so much. And we're also like, who the hell was going to do something if we didn't? I get it. And we have 4 years. We have 4 years that we know of. So there are a lot of really horrible, terrible, crazy things that are going to happen. And we have to be aware of our role in stopping it. And we have to be aware of how we're showing up to consume the information and showing up to respond to the information. So if we want to be a fixer, if we want to be responsible, then we have to start thinking about what we're going to do. Now, I had actually in the fall already been working as soon as he won. I immediately was like, what can I do? Like, what's coming down the pike and what can I do? Obviously, we knew that he was going after DEI. And so I immediately started looking at how can I support professionals, business owners who are in the DEI space, who are going to have major problems under this president, like in this 4 years under this presidency. And we're already seeing that. And so I have already put into motion what I'm doing. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's not something where I need to show up and be like, here's what I'm doing. And I encourage that for you all as well. It's not about like, oh, look at me. Here's what I'm doing. No, it's about just getting into action. So I know where my talents are and I know how I can help. And so I'm in the early phases of that and we'll continue to roll it out. If you know of a DEI business owner, feel free to send them my way. Tell them to shoot me an email or to reach out via Instagram because I am doing things for free to help them. But I guarantee you have skills and talents that you could use to actually make a difference. So, there are people where it is their job to do this. One of the biggest things that we're going to have on our side is legal proceedings, but that costs money. It costs money to hire lawyers, to hire good lawyers. And so one of the most important things you can do right now is donate money to the nonprofit organizations that are fighting these battles in court. I'm just kind of making up things here. Maybe you lead retreats. Maybe you have a bakery. Maybe you have legal services. Maybe there's just so many different things that you could do, that whether it's a passion, a talent, a skill, it's what you do for your day job, where you can help people right now who are being persecuted by this administration, who are in actual harm's way at this moment, or in terms of dealing with the actions that the administration is taking. So that's where I would ask you, what are you doing with the information? Another thing that we can all do, call your Congress people, call your senators. I mean, in Tennessee, it seems a bit like it doesn't make a difference. I mean, I do it, but then Marsha Blackburn likes to send me emails back explaining to me why I don't know what I'm talking about, and she's going to do what she wants to do anyway. And then she puts me on her newsletter list, which, oh my gosh, it's like poking your eyeball out, right? It's terrible. That said, you can still do it. Still do it. If you're in a blue state or a purple state, if you're a Republican, like, I feel like we really need Republicans in red states being the ones calling, and they are on certain issues, right? On others, they're not going to. So knowing what's going to make a difference versus what's going to be banging your head against the wall. On certain issues where I think that there are calls probably coming in, even from conservative or moderates, I will then make the call as well to help like push that over the edge. But if I don't think they're going to make it the calls in Tennessee, I'm not, because that's not a good use of my time. And it's not going to make a difference. But depending on where you live, it absolutely will make a difference. Also, again, going back to the talents, I know that there are things you can be doing. And so if you are consuming all the time, if you're constantly talking with others, right? Like, so it's like, oh my gosh, have you seen this? Right. But y'all ain't doing anything. Stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. It is not good for your health. It doesn't accomplish anything. And y'all, we are needed right now more than ever. We need to be showing up for people, and we need to be doing things that matter. So if you don't know how you can make a difference, as the next time you want to jump on social media or the news and see what's happening, I encourage you to go for a walk or sit down with your journal and try to get really strategic about what it is that you can do that can make a difference in someone's life right now who's going to be harmed by the current administration. I guarantee you there are things that you can do. Okay, one last thing. Make sure that your actions and your money right now are aligned with your values. So make sure that you are investing, that you are spending money with the people that you know need your help right now, or are aligned with what you believe and with the outlook that you want to see in this world. That is a super easy thing to do. But I think we can all do more. And there are so many amazing nonprofits out there who are on the front lines doing this work. And so whatever offends you the most, like when you hear something or you see something and you're just outraged, it could be so many different things, right? Whatever it is where you're outraged, go find the helpers. Go find the people on the front lines. They exist. So instead of scrolling, start researching, find them, and then see where they are asking for help. Like, what are they asking for? Are they asking for money? Are they asking for other kinds of donations or goods? Are they asking you to share certain information? Is there something that you can do locally that supporting their efforts? Go find out. Go find out. There are so many people, like I said, this is their job. They're on the front lines. Your time is going to be better spent going and finding them and seeing how you can support them, as opposed to just getting worked up in a tizzy and consuming all the time, sharing all the time, but not taking any action whatsoever. Okay. Sometimes I do these episodes for me. So that is my reminder. This is like the episode to remind me to stop overfunctioning. And so when you all see me overfunctioning over the next 4 years or ever, feel free to kindly call me out and be like, are you overfunctioning, Heather? And I might be like, maybe. Right. So we are all in this together, and it is a shit show indeed. And we're not going to overfunction. We're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to take care of our businesses. We're going to take care of our families and our communities. And we're going to take action that matters. All right. Have a great week. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.